Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has launched one of the most far-reaching initiatives of his presidency, announcing a nationwide military deployment that will bring soldiers directly into thousands of communities. The move, described as both an outreach mission and a defensive measure, is already stirring passionate reactions from supporters and critics alike. Speaking at a public event in La Guaira, Maduro outlined a plan that begins on September 20th, when soldiers of the Bolivarian National Armed Forces will leave their barracks and take up positions inside Venezuela's neighborhoods. With dramatic flair, Maduro proclaimed, "Starting September 20th, the barracks will go to the people." The plan calls for troops to be dispatched into more than 5,300 communal circuits. These circuits were originally created by the Venezuelan government to oversee local projects and services, but over the years, critics have argued they function less as engines of community empowerment and more as instruments of political control. Now, those circuits will also serve as hubs for military presence. Maduro emphasized that the deployment would not be symbolic alone. Soldiers would carry their weapons with them, organize training sessions, and involve residents in what he described as joint defense readiness. The president insisted that this model reflects the obligations enshrined in the Venezuelan constitution. He said, "The Venezuelan constitution obligates citizens and the military alike to share responsibility for the defense of the homeland." The message was clear. In Maduro's vision, the defense of Venezuela is not just the task of soldiers, but of every Venezuelan citizen. This deployment is about more than just security. It is designed to merge the role of the armed forces with everyday civilian life. Under the program, residents will not simply watch soldiers patrolling their streets. They will be invited to participate in training exercises, learn to handle weapons, and prepare for potential threats. Supporters say this will create a sense of unity, forging tighter bonds between citizens and soldiers. For them, the idea of having the armed forces embedded in neighborhoods is a symbol of solidarity. Families will see the military not as a distant institution, but as part of their daily lives. But opponents see the initiative in a very different light. Critics argue that it risks eroding the separation between civilian spaces and military power. Human rights activists warned that it could expand government surveillance and give authorities even more tools to suppress dissent. Maduro's announcement comes at a moment of heightened regional tension. Earlier this month, US forces destroyed 2 Venezuelan vessels in the Caribbean. The incident, which Washington described as part of anti-drug trafficking operations, left 14 people dead. Caracas denounced the attack as an act of aggression. Officials accused the US of violating Venezuelan sovereignty and warned that the clashes were a dangerous provocation. In response, the government staged large-scale military exercises on La Orchila Island on September 17th. Thousands of troops were deployed in amphibious landings and live fire drills. Tanks rolled across beaches, fighter jets roared overhead, and artillery units pounded their targets, all broadcast live on Venezuelan state television. Officials described the drills as a defensive measure against rising American military activity in the region. Maduro himself framed them as proof that Venezuela is ready to defend itself from what he calls imperialist threats. One day later, he unveiled his plan to move the barracks into the communities. For many observers, the timing was no coincidence. The message was unmistakable. Venezuela is preparing not only with its armed forces, but with its people. The government has portrayed the move as a patriotic step forward. State media outlets described it as a demonstration of resilience, bringing soldiers closer to the people and proving that the Bolivarian project lives on. Officials argued that embedding troops in communities is the most effective way to strengthen national unity. Supporters echoed that sentiment. On the streets of Caracas, government loyalists told reporters they were reassured by the idea of soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder with citizens. Some described it as an opportunity to learn vital skills, particularly in a country that has faced years of political turmoil and economic instability. But opposition figures quickly voiced alarm. They argue the initiative will deepen the militarization of daily life and undermine civic freedoms. Community leaders in opposition-leaning areas fear that soldiers could be used to intimidate residents and monitor political activity. Human rights organizations have raised the specter of abuses. pointing to Venezuela's history of crackdowns on protest and reports of extrajudicial killings by security forces. Analysts outside the country also drew parallels with other authoritarian models. They compared the plan to Cuba's committees for the defense of the revolution, local neighborhood watch groups that critics say function as surveillance networks for the state. In Venezuela's case, the addition of armed soldiers takes that idea even further, embedding coercive power directly into community life. For Maduro, the deployment serves multiple purposes. Domestically, it reinforces his government's grip by ensuring a constant military presence in everyday spaces. Politically, it demonstrates his ability to command loyalty from the armed forces, an institution that has been central to his survival in power. Internationally, it sends a message of defiance. With tensions running high after the clashes in the Caribbean, the community deployment is a way to show that Venezuela is not intimidated. By linking ordinary citizens to national defense, Maduro projects the image of a country ready to resist foreign aggression at every level. This strategy also fits into a broader pattern. Since succeeding Hugo Chavez, Maduro has repeatedly sought to intertwine civilian structures with military authority. By doing so, he blurs the line between state and society, presenting his government as the embodiment of the people while maintaining firm control. As the date for the deployment approaches, Venezuelans are left to grapple with the implications. In interviews, supporters described the initiative as a natural extension of the Bolivarian Revolution. One Caracas resident said having soldiers in neighborhoods would strengthen the community and show that the government is with the people, not above them. Opponents painted a darker picture. An activist in the city of Maracaibo said the deployment would bring fear, not protection, warning that soldiers could be used to suppress opposition gatherings or punish dissent. International human rights groups echoed those fears, arguing that Venezuela's track record gives little reason for confidence. Beyond Venezuela, the move has drawn attention from regional observers. Latin American governments, already divided over how to engage with Caracas, are watching closely. For US officials, the deployment is likely to be interpreted as further evidence of militarization, reinforcing their portrayal of Maduro as an authoritarian leader clinging to power. Diplomatic analysts suggest the move could harden Venezuela's isolation, particularly at a time when its economy remains fragile and dependent on limited sources of external revenue. Yet it could also deepen solidarity among Maduro's allies, who view his government as a symbol of resistance to US influence. With September 20th looming, Venezuela stands at a crossroads. The decision to send soldiers into more than 5,300 communities is about more than security. It is about identity, sovereignty, and the future of governance in the country. For supporters, it is a chance to forge unity and prepare for threats in an uncertain world. For critics, it is a dangerous step toward embedding militarization into the heart of civilian life. Maduro has staked his argument on patriotism and the Constitution, invoking a vision of shared responsibility. But the question remains, will this strategy inspire unity or deepen division? One thing is clear, the barracks will no longer be confined to their walls. In the president's own words, spoken defiantly to the crowd in La Guaira, starting September 20th, the barracks will go to the people. And with that, Venezuela embarks on a new chapter in its turbulent history, one where the lines between soldier and citizen, community and barracks may never again be drawn so clearly.